μας χαρά να φτάνουμε με επιτυχία στο τελευταίο σέσιο του Συνεδρίου και διπλή χαρά γιατί έχουμε να υποδεχτούμε δύο πολύ σπουδαίες Ελληνίδες ερευνήτριες και καθηγήτριες, την κυρία Μαγκίνα και την κυρία Μουζά. Πρώτη θα μας παρουσιάσει η κυρία Μαγκίνα μια πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ομιλία, αλλά θα ήθελα πρωτίστως να τη συστήσω για όσους δεν ξέρουν το σπουδαίο έργο που παράγει. Είναι καθηγήτρια στο τμήμα πληροφορικής του University College του Δουβλίνου. Είχε ολοκληρώσει τις προπτυχιακές της σπουδές στο Γεωπονικό Πανεπιστήμιο. Συνέχισε με μεταπτυχιακές σπουδές στο Εδιμβούργο σε θέματα τεχνητής νοημοσύνης και κατόπιν πραγματοποίησε το διδακτορικό της στο Πανεπιστήμιο του Strathclyde στο τμήμα ηλεκτρονικών και ηλεκτρολόγων μηχανικών, δουλεύοντας σε agent-based εφαρμογές για έξυπνη ερμηνεία δεδομένων. Ο τομέας της έρευνάς της επικεντρώνεται στην ανάλυση λογισμικού, το σχεδιασμό και την ανάπτυξη multi-agent συστημάτων, τα οποία χρησιμοποιούν διαφορετικές τεχνικές τεχνητής νοημοσύνης. Το 2002 εντάχθηκε στο School of Computer Science στο University College of Dublin, στο Δουβλίνο, στην Ιρλανδία. Το εργαστήριό της λειτουργεί στην τομή μεταξύ εφαρμοσμένης τεχνητής νοημοσύνης και ανάπτυξης διεπιστημονικών εφαρμογών. Επί του παρόντος, εκτός πολλών άλλων που κάνει, θα με συγχωρέσει που δεν μπορώ να τα αναφέρω όλα, είναι συντονίστρια 2 έργων Horizon 2020 και ενός Erasmus+. Το ερευνητικό της έργο χρηματοδοτείται από το SFI Energy System Integration Partnership Program. Ακαδημαϊκά συνεργάζεται με το Vista Milk SFI Research Center και επιβλέπει 2 κέντρα για research training. Έχει συγγράψει περισσότερα από 190 άρθρα μετά από κρίσεις σε διεθνή συνέδρια και περιοδικά, ενώ την τρέχουσα περίοδο είναι Vice Principal στο UCD College of Science και κάτοχος της θέσης Αθηνάς One Broad Award για το School of Computer Science. Στη σημερινή της ομιλία θα εστιάσει στην προώθηση εκπαιδευτικών διαδραστικών συστημάτων μέσω του H2020, το ARETE Project. Ο λόγος σε εσάς και πάλι ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ για την τιμή που μας κάνετε.
Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Και όπως είπα και πριν, είναι τιμή μου να παρουσιάζω σε ελληνικό κοινό, αλλά θα με συγχωρέσετε in advance γιατί δεν θα μιλήσω στα ελληνικά. Πείτε μου εάν βλέπετε τα slides μου.
Τέλεια.
Μάλιστα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ και για την εισαγωγή που κάνατε. I am in Dublin for the last 20 years and 24 years abroad total, so just half of my life abroad. So it is an honor to talk to you all today about advancing educational interactive systems, and special thanks to Dr. Dukakis who invited me to this talk. I've known Spiros for some years now. I think I'm fitting more here in this presentation for your conference because of the innovation in educational systems. And although my talk initially I said that I will talk about ARETE, I thought it would be nicer if I give you a little bit of background how ARETE came on board as a H2020. But before that, I want to tell you where I am. I am in UCD since 2002, as you mentioned. Although 2003, 4, and 5, I was based in Fudan University in Shanghai in China for a joint BSc with UCD. So UCD is very green, as you can see, and tonight we have a very beautiful evening. It's not cold and it's very bright outside, and we are the largest urban university campus in Europe. So we have 350 acres in size of our campus. So it is like a whole city, and you're all more than welcome to come and visit us. Now, Ireland, what attracted me in Ireland, and I think you'll see further down in the slides how the projects have advanced, it's because it is a vibrant and advanced economy. As you know, in Ireland and Greece, we share something in common. We both went through an economic crisis some years ago, but right now we are considered the country of Silicon Valley of Europe. So it is a high-tech country. I am in the School of Computer Science, and we in College of Science make sure that we have the good quality graduates for global citizenship, so all around the world. So more than 250 global financial institutions, 8 out of 10 top ICT companies in Dublin, and 15 out of 20 medical device companies, which is highly related with projects I'm doing, and 9 out of top 10 pharmaceutical companies. So you can relate of how big responsibility we have in academic institutions to have good quality of graduates. But for today, and for the umbrella of projects that I will show you today, and why I'm here, is that what has happened with educational technology and the innovation. I've been monitoring COVID-19 and EdTech for the last 2 years that we're in the pandemic. And there is a couple of things that pandemic has taught us, and they're not all of them bad. And I think most of the educational technologies might agree with this here. It was in Irish Times in 2020 when this was advertised, and it's about schools. Schools are more than a physical building. Relational and socio-emotional dynamics comprise the fabric of schooling. Education and schooling is innately pastoral with care and empathy at its core. Performativity holds higher status than process. In Ireland, we have the DES system, where we support the most vulnerable communities, and I'm sure similar ones exist in Greece too. Collaboration of schools and support services is crucial. Schooling at distance is highly problematic, and daily interactions are fundamental. And I think it's the same in second level education as well. We need the daily interactions with the students. Learning should be fun, and I'll come to that with VR and AR later, because we need to foster creativity and innovation. It is inequitable to make assumptions about learner actions to resources at home, and technology enables and excludes learners. So keep these 11 things in mind as we go on with my slides and different projects that have happened. But we have been taught a lot the last 2 years. And the educational technologies came back and said, oh, why haven't we had the technology in education all these years? I've been working on AI in educational systems. I think it was back in 2002 when I started, and everything had been very slow. Obviously, with the development in the networks, in the systems, and with the pandemic, we were enforced now to take a large part of education with technology. And many people have asked these days, how come we didn't do it earlier? How come we didn't do it earlier to save cost, effort on daily commute, administration? But there is a couple of key factors that we need to consider. There are specific modules that need to be taught in labs, workshops, training sessions. And this is where VR and AR experience can actually bring an important feature in these e-learning systems. And we will see more of how this can happen. So in terms of innovation now, are new age technologies the key to boosting economies? I can share my slides. I will not read all of them. This is just information for you, but look at the report from ARETE X. The most recent report is about between 2020 and 2030, there will be market worth of $30 billion by 2030 in terms of VR and AR products. And I'm sure everybody has seen the big tech companies investing on VR and AR development of hardware and software. But there are a couple of things that we need to consider before we move on and we adapt these solutions. And another thing, because I'm talking about from the perspective of third level education, if you have the students at home all the time and they learn from home, you're missing the internationalization part. You're missing this connection of the citizens, the global citizens that the campus has. So you have the requirements of professional practice, the assessment, the systematic development, and you have the knowledge across all disciplines. But what happens about when you need interaction with the students and the staff? And this is the new learning ecology. You can see here on campus and off campus. It would be nice to start monitoring about internationalization of the curriculum. I'm planning to do a bit of research in this area, so if anybody is interested, I'm happy to investigate further. So what are the reasons to use XR technologies in education? First of all, we can achieve learning goals across domains, and we can have effective pedagogical uses. So we can support skill-based and competency-based teaching and learning. We can expand a range of activities that wouldn't be possible to actually replicate for all the students. And of course, experimenting by providing new functionality and enabling new forms of interaction. You will see a couple of examples in a while why we're doing this. Now, the adoption of XR in teaching has two major requirements. And I'm always saying that when people are asking me whether they should adapt XR within the curriculum. First of all, it has to fit into the learning outcomes and the lesson plans of the teacher. And secondly, it will also has to be cost effective. So the effectiveness is influenced also from fidelity, from ease of use, novelty. You need time to train the staff. And as far as I know, digital competence of teachers is one of the issues that Europe is facing at the moment, and there is investment on this. So two major challenges when we integrate XR into curriculum is the time and the skills. You need the time and the skills for the students because they need sufficient time to engage deeply with the technology, and also for the staff as well, for the instructors. And again, cost is a big issue. So to summarize, fidelity and realism of the simulation, the ease of use, providing something that is not available any other way, increase in students' time on task, and then it has to be a spirit of experimentation. So you need to have the buy-in from the teachers or the school principal. So they need to be interested. Another thing I'm looking into is the Bloom's taxonomy. We have found in medicine applications of XR, third level education, that medicine students are the best students anyway. I mean, they would have A+ in all subjects. So we're not really interested on whether they can understand or they can analyze, but we're interested of what's the impact of XR technology within their curriculum and their educational process. So we found that for specific medicine lesson plans, that the students could actually hold on to the knowledge better when they have the intervention with XR technology for 2 months after they've been introduced to the new knowledge domain. So an introduction now about our projects. As I said, in my lab, I have a portfolio of projects, and we started working on XR projects sometime in around 2015. And we started, first of all, for future learning spaces when the first Oculus came out and the HTC Vive. So we started simulating lecture theaters, and we were using Unity 3D Engine, of course. And then the issue came, okay, we had the lecture theater, what about the learning content? And some of you might have seen my paper in IEEE about 3D learning objects. So we were trying to build our own learning objects, and we found that photogrammetry worked very well for objects, but led to high polygon counts. And those that are familiar with 3D development, they will understand what I mean here. So low poly-based environments is better, so you can add additional content when needed. So generally, we recommend for objects with photogrammetry, it proves better approach, and it's better to scan your own objects when you need to create your content. And then in 2015-16, we started working with a couple of hospitals in Ireland. And the first one was the Mater Hospital, where we investigated the use of augmented reality for EVER training. For those that are not familiar with EVER training, this is when there is cardiovascular surgery and they wanted to simulate the whole process. We spent a day at the surgery with the experts. As you can see here, we made a mobile app. We even simulated the fluorescent images with the aorta and the little camera that went in. And it was generally evaluated very positively, both in terms of the usage evaluation, and the system evaluation as well. The second application we did back then was virtual reality to assist pre-operative planning, and that was Crumlin Hospital. It was a children's hospital, and that's when kids had some specific heart diseases, and the consultants need the 3D printed heart in order to identify whether there is a problem pre-operational, and they could resolve it, and they could all discuss about it. And we did augmented reality into Unity, and then VR as well models, and we did the model interaction for the experts and the integration of the components. In this project, we ended up with patient-specific 3D printed models and 3D models within Unity, and then the VR scene or the AR scene was created. So it was all about future educational spaces, and then in 2018, we moved on. School of Veterinary came up and wanted to discuss about how we can actually bring in the anatomy course within the curriculum, and mimic the live tissue is a big issue within this course. And they wanted to have anatomy material that could be recycled. As you can see, it's not feasible to have every day a dog to actually experiment on the anatomy of the dog. But it has been a great experience, and it's active. There were no distractions. There is immediate engagement, exploration, and hands-on. It helped with complex subjects, and it is for all learning styles. So we did create the 3D objects, and I will show you generally the process. So from DICOM data, then to 3D volume, Mesh Lab, Blender, FBX files, and then we created the virtual scene. And this is how it looks like within Unity and DICOM to 3D volume, and you can see that it's actually quite real. The computed tomography, the CT scan, and the MRI data were all imported, and then we made the 3D models. But you can see within the volume modification, we had to remove noise, simplify the model, and then segment the organs and the skull segmentation. And that was, as I said, back in 2018. We're moving now to 2021 to the full model of the dog with veterinary science. I will not play the video, but there is a couple of videos online on YouTube from the students that you can see. We had also two modes, one in the VR environment when the students could go to our cave and test it. And then we had also the MCQ modes and the selection mode where we can ask the students and they can pass the tests. And we have certain collaborations as well for accredited courses and standardized material so they can fit the curriculum at, I think it's second year undergraduate students that they're taking this. And you can see an example. This is the video where it shows the example. So it was a great achievement back then, and we still move on with the project with the full body, but even the anatomy of the head, it's still in the curriculum and the students are testing it. Now, the Maternity Holly Street Hospital in Dublin, they have contacted us as well, and we're working on another project, which is the 3D VR baby, and we're monitoring the stages of fetal development, especially for training midwives when they want to see how they can monitor the fetus development and also to identify any abnormalities. So it's still work in progress, although we have tested it already with around 100 practitioners, and we have the data under publication accepted at the moment. So we use VR headsets, the latest version of Oculus Quest, and the images are all ultrasound images, and they're converted to STL file and format. The main motivation for this work is about 3D imaging applicability in fetal medicine. It has huge educational benefits, active learning for the medicine students, immersion, affordability, and it's non-destructive. And it's proved really useful, especially during the pandemic. So this is just to show you an example. This was only the first version. And we even have the heartbeat in the background where the user can go around and see week by week the development. But as I said, this was the initial stage. Now it's been even much more improved. And let's have a look at other projects. I think you mentioned the two Horizon 2020 that I'm coordinating. The first one was a HA project. We submitted in 2016, got the project in 2017, and it finished in 2019. It was about digital technologies and especially augmented reality for students that are diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit disorder. And as you can see, we had a number of students within Ireland, and specifically when we recruited, we wanted to be inclusive. So you can see we had participants from different counties, and you can see the different male and female. We had more male students, but that's normal because it's more male students diagnosed with ADHD. We had three groups. We had one, which is the control group without any intervention. Wordsworth Learning group was the one that had only digital technologies without augmented reality. And the AHA intervention was the web-based Wordsworth Learning literacy skills program, but with augmented reality. What is really interesting, and I'm sure the teachers in Greece will agree with me, there is a 3 to 5% normally of the population in the classrooms that have some form of disability, either ADHD or ASD or a comorbidity. So what we wanted to see is the impact for these students, because these students are the ones that they lag behind. This is kind of a screenshot of the web-based system that we had, but I want, and this is the form that the teachers had to actually submit after each intervention. So the intervention lasted in around between 12 to 16 weeks for 15 minutes every day. And as long as they finish the levels of the Wordsworth Learning system, and then they would have to go online and enter the data. What's really interesting though, and I will skip through this, you can find all this information in our publications. So have a look here of what happened within the three groups. So this is the control group. This is just the web-based literacy group. And this is the group with augmented reality. Accuracy means how accurate were they in the reading in English, only in English, and you can see the augmented reality impact. This is the control group. So that means that they were more accurate in the reading, in the comprehension. And now you will see the negative here in the reading rate, which is actually a positive result, although it's a negative number. What happens is students that have reading disabilities, what happens is they read very fast, so they don't comprehend. So that shows that with digital technologies, we managed to slow their reading speed. If they slow down, then they comprehend, and then they become better learners. So generally a very positive impact for from our interventions. Couple of things, we still receive feedback from parents and from school principals. You can see set of parents were over the moon with the improvement. It was their moment in the sun. Now these are the kids that would normally be outside of the classroom because they have attention deficit. They just wouldn't have the patience to sit down and read a book like the other students in the class. And they will always be outside of the classroom. Independent learners, they developed additional competence, improved noticeably, and even their standard tests would jump from a 4 to a 6 across board. So it's not, you make it a small change, but that small change is at the end a lifetime change for a person. For me, I was excited to see 117 students participated in this project. And following this project came the H2020. This is another bigger vision of mine, so that all Europe has open access to XR and access to education, most of all. So we have 3 main pilots. We are 11 partners. You can see them. You can find us on our website and areteproject.eu. It started in 2019. It's going to finish April 2023. And we have been working non-stop during the pandemic. And I wish I had the project outcomes ready before the pandemic started, because it would be really valuable for those students at home. So the methodology is all about developing and evaluating the effectiveness of interactive augmented reality content toolkit. Remember I mentioned the first slides that A, we don't have content, B, it's the digital competence of our teachers, so we need to do something about it. Within the different pilots, we are assessing, first of all around Europe, within ARETE, the impact of the augmented reality technology. I know the impact already for students diagnosed with ADHD, but I want to test it in the classroom, in our classrooms all around Europe. So what we have done, we have created 3 pilots. Pilot 1 is only for English speakers, so it limits the number of countries from Europe that participate. So we have Malta, Ireland, and England. And in this pilot, we have around 150 students that will participate, and they will be interacting with augmented reality content for English language literacy. For pilot 2, which is actually translated in many languages, we have around 3,500 students registered. And actually both pilots, they have started already in schools. So the interventions have started. Many of you might have heard it in our school, in your schools as well in Greece, because Greece is participating in pilot 2. So pilot 2 is about geography and geometry, and it is mobile apps for augmented reality. Pilot 3 will run only in the Netherlands and in Italy, and it's all about monitoring positive behavior through augmented reality solutions. And we will have around 450 students. In terms of devices, they'll be interactive, collaborative, and they will adapt to any content. And the other big issue is that we are using the standards, ARLEM standards, and we are having our own authoring toolkit. I want the teachers to be engaged. I want the teachers to have a platform where they can go and they can create their own augmented reality scene. If you go arete.ucd.ie, it's our own platform. We're hosting it, and it will be active in around February, March, and we're going to call in teachers to test it as well. It is based on Mirage XR, an augmented reality platform for multiple users, and we are already on version 1.7. Generally, the ecosystem is based on user-centric interaction design. We do take into account feedback from the users, and we have, as you can see, 3 versions of the ARETE ecosystem throughout the years. We have different evaluation cycles. Please do follow up on our website, and there's always Twitter news and LinkedIn news of how we are. Generally, our pilots are an investment to future XR education. It's all about interactive content, interactive collaborative content, excuse me, but I also want to give the power, empower the teachers, even though they don't have digital competence for AR, empower them with a toolkit so that they can use this portal and just get a glimpse of what they can create. So through these 3 pilots, we are also doing utilization of standardized tests, so the pre and the post assessment within the pilot. And at the end of the project, we'll be able to show you what was the impact. This assessment of the intervention is crucial, because I believe even Brussels, they funded the project. They want to see if it is positive outcome and whether we can inform also policy. So if you see the XR text during COVID, you can see whether we can achieve teaching and learning goals. The technology is there. So you have all these new headsets now that are available. Some of them are costly, some of them are not. We have experiential learning, we have online XR classrooms and campuses. But can we integrate with existing curriculum? And this is the whole point of the lesson plans and matching the pedagogy with the effectiveness of the technology. Can XR advance augmented learning analytics? That's another issue. That's why we're bringing ARLEM in our platform. What's the pedagogical impact, whether we have increased student engagement or not, and whether specific interventions, needs, and capabilities have to be met. And if you can see around you, the winners of Corona and post-Corona will be the online events, the e-learning, and of course, the personalized devices and the XR touchless technologies. In terms of future, we learned that we have VR, AR meeting rooms. We have new avatars, so a teacher can be an avatar as well for the student. We have XR labs. We have XR touchless technologies. Also, I just want to mention, I know I'm over time, a couple minutes, but we're working on the IEEE Global Initiative on Ethics of Extended Reality. And I'm actually chairing and leading the chapter of XR Ethics for Education. I'm really passionate about creating standards in terms of education and XR, because by empowering students and empowering teachers to actually create content and create the augmented reality scenes, we have to set the standards for ethical content as well. So I hope to see some of you here. We have a big event on the 14th of October. That's next week. And thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm available.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ την καθηγήτρια, την κυρία Μαγκίνα, για την πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ομιλία. Παρακαλώ, ναι. Μία-δύο ερωτήσεις μπορούμε να τις έχουμε. Okay. Η κυρία Χιονίδου, παρακαλώ.
Να ευχαριστήσω την κυρία Μαρίνα, την κυρία Μαγκίνα, γιατί μας προσέφερε μέχρι τώρα από τις πολυετείς εμπειρίες της, από την επιστημοσύνη της, αλλά και από την μεγάλη της έφεση στην έρευνα. Και ήθελα να ρωτήσω αν θα μπορούσε να σχολιάσει τώρα ή αν μας στείλει κάτι σχετικά με το affective domain των εκπαιδευόμενων σε εισαγωγικά που έχει μέχρι τώρα.
Effective domain, you mean the problem domain?
Εννοώ το συναισθηματικό τομέα σε σχέση με αυτά όλα που βιώνουν οι εκπαιδευόμενοι.
Δεν έχουμε κάνει ανάλυση συναισθηματικού τομέα. Από άποψη, έχουμε κάνει ανάλυση των motivation skills. Intrinsic motivation, αλλά emotional analysis δεν έχουμε κάνει.
Ακόμα.
We collect data about the usage of the hardware, but in terms of whether it's easy to use, whether they feel that some people don't really like the VR headsets. So we're collecting this information as well. Although the VR headsets have been increased in terms of development lately, so the latency is not as bad.
Mm-hmm. Ωραία, ευχαριστώ πολύ και συγχαίρω στην κυριολεξία. Σας ευχαριστούμε.
Ευχαριστώ.
Ωραία. Να προχωρήσουμε με την τελευταία μας ομιλία. Η τελευταία μας ομιλήτρια είναι η καθηγήτρια Chrystalla Mouza. Είναι distinguished professor στον τομέα της εκπαίδευσης εκπαιδευτικών με ειδίκευση στην εκπαιδευτική τεχνολογία. Την τρέχουσα περίοδο είναι διευθύντρια της Σχολής Εκπαίδευσης του Πανεπιστημίου του Delaware. Έχει ολοκληρώσει τις προπτυχιακές σπουδές στο Πανεπιστήμιο Ιωαννίνων, απέκτησε αρκετά μεταπτυχιακά διπλώματα και έλαβε το διδακτορικό της στην εκπαιδευτική τεχνολογία και τα ψηφιακά μέσα από το Teachers College του Columbia University. Ολοκλήρωσε μεταδιδακτορική έρευνα στην Educational Testing Service και έχει εξειδίκευση σε επιστήμες της μάθησης, συμπεριλαμβανόμενης της μάθησης των εκπαιδευτικών και των εφαρμογών της τεχνολογίας στην τάξη. Είναι κύρια ερευνήτρια σε διάφορα έργα που έχουν χρηματοδοτηθεί από το Τμήμα Εκπαίδευσης του Delaware για την βελτίωση της ποιότητας των εκπαιδευτικών στα σχολεία, ενώ είναι πολύ σημαντικό ότι είναι η αποδέκτης του βραβείου διακεκριμένης έρευνας στην εκπαίδευση των δασκάλων το 2010 από την Ένωση Εκπαιδευτικών πρώην πρόεδρος της ομάδας ειδικού ενδιαφέροντος της ARETE Advanced Technologies for Learning. Τέλος, να αναφέρω ότι η αγαπητή Chrystalla θα βρίσκεται τον Ιανουάριο του 2022 σε επισκέπτεται καθηγήτρια στο τμήμα πληροφορικής του Ελληνικού Πανεπιστημίου, στο εργαστήριο μας στο βιοπληροφορικής, μέσω του προγράμματος υποτροφιών Greek Diaspora Fellowship Program και της χρηματοδότησης από το Ίδρυμα Σταύρος Νιάρχος και του Ιδρύματος Fulbright, οπότε θα έχουμε την χαρά να την έχουμε και στην Ελλάδα. Στη σημερινή της ομιλία θα εστιάσει σε ένα άκρως ενδιαφέρον θέμα που πιθανώς να ξεπερνά και τα στενά όρια των εκπαιδευτικών πληροφορικής. Πιο συγκεκριμένα θα μας μιλήσει για τα χαρακτηριστικά της αποτελεσματικής επαγγελματικής ανάπτυξης εκπαιδευτικών που διδάσκουν την υπολογιστική επιστήμη. Σας ευχαριστούμε και πάλι για την τιμή που μας κάνετε να μιλήσετε στο συνεδριό μας, κυρία Μouza.
Ευχαριστώ εγώ. Καλησπέρα σας και είναι μεγάλη τιμή μου βέβαια που βρίσκομαι μαζί σας. Κρίμα που δεν είμαστε από κοντά, αλλά έστω και διαδικτυακά. Χαίρομαι που μου δίνετε ευκαιρία να μιλήσω για τη δουλειά που κάνουμε εδώ στο Πανεπιστήμιο του Delaware γύρω από την επιμόρφωση των εκπαιδευτικών στον τομέα της πληροφορικής. Όπως και η κυρία Μαγκίνα, και ευχαριστώ πολύ, η ομιλία της νομίζω έδωσε έτσι την εισαγωγή για αυτό που θα μιλήσω. Έχει αναφερθεί γενικότερα για τις δυσκολίες που υπάρχουν σχετικά με το digital competency of teachers in Europe και νομίζω το θέμα μου είναι πολύ σχετικό με αυτό. Και πάλι χαίρομαι που είμαι εδώ και όπως είπα, παρόλο που έχω αποφοιτήσει στο Ελληνικό Πανεπιστήμιο, θα μιλήσω και εγώ στα αγγλικά μετά από 25 χρόνια στην Αμερική. Η ορολογία είναι κάπως δύσκολη στα ελληνικά. Ο τίτλος της ομιλίας μου, όπως βλέπετε, είναι «Characteristics of Effective Professional Development for Computing Education Teachers». And before I start, I would like to say that this work is made possible through generous funding from the National Science Foundation here in the United States, and through collaboration with colleagues in computer science, as well as graduate students in education and computer science. So this is truly a collaborative and interdisciplinary effort. Let's start by first discussing the renewed interest in computer science education across all facets of education. So as many of you know, in recent years, there has been a tremendous interest in computer science education around the world. That's true for the United States, Greece, England, Ireland, Finland, and a number of other countries. The rise of interest in computer science education can be attributed to both policy initiatives, but also a lot of industry efforts who are worried about the next generation of computing education workforce. In the United States, these initiatives include the Computer Science for All initiative, which really seeks to make sure that all students have quality education in computer science, but also organizations such as Code.org, Google, Oracle, which are funding school-based initiatives to promote computer science education. There are a number of reasons for this renewed interest. Some of those are listed here. One of them, obviously, is economic workforce development, and I think Professor Mangina also spoke a little bit about that. There's tremendous need to produce a greater number of computer scientists. For example, here in the United States, the Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that the majority of STEM jobs are in computer science-related fields. The second one is the intellectual relevance of computing across disciplines. So we know that concepts from computer science could cut across disciplines, but also the soft skills acquired through computing fields such as collaboration and problem solving, they really have relevance across the board. The third one is the social and personal agency, so helping all students become creators of computing. For those of us who have daily interaction with students and children, we know that they use technology a lot, they use it frequently, but they often acquire those skills as users and are not given enough opportunity to become creators of computing innovations. So in fact, only a small and fairly homogeneous group of students acquire computer science skills required to become creators and producers of technology innovations. I tried to attend a few talks over the last couple of days. Obviously, the time difference was a little bit difficult, but I've heard a number of talks really talking about this idea of education for social justice and making sure that all students from across diverse backgrounds, they have opportunities to get engaged with computing. And really that's one of the primary reasons that we like to provide quality opportunities for students to engage with computer. The goal is not to promote everyone, to make everyone a computer scientist, but the goal is to help all students understand how computing works so that they can become more engaged with civic responsibilities. So understanding how the technology works around them, to keep safe online, to conduct daily business from banking to security to information retrieval. But a big component of my work, again, is also related to equity reasons. So this idea of broadening participation in computing, particularly among groups of students who we know traditionally have been underrepresented in computer science fields. And that includes females as well as minorities. This underrepresentation of females in computing is particularly problematic for a number of reasons, both economic and scientific. First of all, it limits female participation in potentially profitable career fields. Computing is essential across fields, and some of the most well-paid jobs really revolve around computing. Therefore, it is important that all segments of the population have an opportunity to be involved. Second, as I mentioned earlier, both the US economy, but also economies around the world, they depend on highly skilled workers in computing fields. So this underrepresentation of women in computing has really resulted in shortages of qualified workers. Here in the United States, there's a special category of visa that really seeks to attract more computing educated workforce here in the US. And I guess a last one, which is equally important, is really the fact that a lot of computing innovations depend on diverse teams, right? So lack of female participation in computing could really result in products that are not responsive to the needs of females or other populations, such as those with special needs, like Professor Mangina spoke about, when we produce different kinds of innovations. Therefore, it's really important that we have diverse of teams in the design of computing products. While there are many reasons for the renewed interest in computer science education, there are also a number of challenges around computer science education. And one of the biggest challenges is really teacher professional development. In the United States, teacher preparation is a little bit different. So I understand that in Greece, the issue might somewhat be a little less prominent because most computer science teachers do have a background in computer science. This is not necessarily the case in the United States, and as far as I understand, in Europe as well. So you may wonder why. The primary reason is economic. So due to the demand of computer science talent by industry, substantially higher salaries, it's really very difficult here in the US to attract computer science teachers. Another reason is the lack of a credentialing program. So unlike Greece, here in the United States, just having a degree in your content area is not enough to be a teacher. So you'll have to complete postgraduate studies that prepare you for teaching. A third reason is the evolving nature of computing. There's multiple curricula, there's different programming language, different teaching methods. So just keeping up with all this seems overwhelming. And the last one is the limited ways to learn content and pedagogical strategies for effective instruction among teachers. So I'm going to shift around and talk a little bit about research on effective practices for computer science professional development, which is really the primary goal of this talk, right? So first off, there is limited research on best practices for computer science professional development specifically. So even though professional development is widely considered as a critical element for the implementation of computer science standards and curricula, there's limited research that exists on design features of professional development that help teachers gain computer science content and teaching pedagogy that would ultimately make a difference in the classroom. In fact, in one study that has been conducted just a few years ago, there were only about 20 studies that were done that really demonstrated how professional development might work for teachers of computing. That being said, we know quite a bit about what makes professional development effective more broadly. And we know that effective professional development usually includes 5 features. There's a focus on developing teacher knowledge. It includes active learning strategies. It's coherent. It focuses around collaboration, and it's of sustained duration. So much of the research in this area indicates that teachers need about 40 hours of professional development before they're able to apply what they learn in their practice. There's even more limited research, however, on how those characteristics of professional development relate to computing, and particularly in the context of technological pedagogical content knowledge, which is the type of knowledge that we know teachers need in order to effectively utilize computing in their classroom. In fact, some of this work comes from your own colleagues who are here in this presentation today. So what do we mean by focus on teacher knowledge? So as I mentioned, we need both content knowledge, so knowledge of computer science principles, knowledge of pedagogy, so how do you teach computer science to students, but also opportunities for teachers to engage as active learners, to really experience learning as their students. Professional development also has to be coherent. So for example, how does it fit with other initiatives in a school context? It has to be collaborative. And this is particularly important for teachers of computer science because typically they're the only ones at their school. So for example, in mathematics, you usually have definitely more than one because every student, has mathematics in their curriculum. That's not the case for computer science, where typically only one teacher is needed, and therefore they don't have a community, they don't have peers, they don't have other colleagues to touch base with. And finally, as I mentioned, this idea of sustained duration. So it's not enough to have a one and done type of professional development, but it's really important for it to not only be spread over time, but also includes opportunities for follow-up support. So let me move this out of the way. So now let me talk more specifically about the purpose of my talk today, which is focuses around 2 questions that we have been exploring over time. So what design features should characterize professional development that helps teachers integrate computer science content and pedagogy across curricula? How do these design features impact teacher learning in terms of both their own content knowledge, but also pedagogy? Our work is situated in 2 projects that are funded by the National Science Foundation. One is called the CS10K. So this was an idea, this was based on the need and the idea that the United States must prepare approximately 10,000 teachers who would be qualified to teach 10,000 high schools. And this really focused primarily on high school teachers. And the other initiative, it's called STEM Plus C. So this is an initiative where it's focusing on bringing more ideas and concepts from computer science into STEM-oriented fields. So when we say STEM, we mean science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this second initiative focused primarily on teachers in middle school. So middle school in Greece would be gymnasia, so grades typically 6 through 9. And again, it's this idea that instead of just focusing on standalone curricula around computer science, that we really focus much more on bringing these ideas from computer science within disciplines so that students could see how computing is not just for those students who would like to study computer science, but it really has relevance across the board. So the purpose of this initiative is, again, transform computing and increase the number of students from underrepresented groups studying computer science. Since 2012, we have established the Partner for CS project, which again, purpose is to improve the teaching of computer science through an approach that includes 3 elements. The first is a 1-week summer institute that we have been offering every year since 2013, that it also includes follow-up support directly in the classroom. And you might ask, well, how do you provide this classroom-based support? How do you scale that? And what we have done here at the University of Delaware, we have created a college-level course for students who are primarily from computer science, although that's not a requirement. The requirement is that they have taken at least 2 classes in computer science. And they sign up for this course that's called Field Experience in Teaching Computing. More recently, we call it Engaging Youth in Computing. And their job is to go out in the school. So we partner them with teachers who have attended our week-long summer institute. And they go out in the schools, and their role is to support the teachers directly in the classroom, but also serve as role models for the school students. And the third component is the strong partnerships that we have built over the years with our partner schools. So let me turn a little bit to the Summer Institute. So what do we cover in this week-long Summer Institute? So every summer, as I've mentioned, since 2013, the last week of June, we'll be running a Summer Institute for any teacher in the state of Delaware who is interested in attending. We meet all day long from 9 until 5, and it's almost like a boot camp, type of opportunity for the teachers to build their content knowledge and also understanding of how to deliver computer science principles to their students. So in terms of content, we focus on the 7 principles of computer science that are included in a lot of the curricula here in the United States, including those developed by the College Board. So we try to shift a little bit away from thinking about computer science as just this idea of programming, and rather provide different pathways for teachers to understand how they can bring those ideas back in their classroom. So the first principle is that of creativity. And I know typically we don't think about computing fields as very creative. At least that's the misperception that a lot of students and teachers have. They see it as a very procedural type of domain. So we try to break away from that mindset and really help them see how computing could be a very creative endeavor. The second is a principle of abstraction. So how can we reduce information to focus on relevant concepts? Data seems to be a big one, and usually that's a really, really nice pathway for lower grade teachers into computing. Teachers are used to using a lot of data in their classroom. If you think about science, if you think about math, they tend to work a lot with data. So thinking about how they can bring ideas that revolve around data collection, analysis, representation, visualization into their classroom becomes a really nice entry point into computing. Algorithms, programming, internet. And this last piece, it's also one that's very important and we'll try to emphasize quite a bit in the Summer Institute. So this idea of impacts of computing on society. So we know that in terms of broadening participation in computing, especially for females, it's really important that they feel that what they do has an impact on society. This idea of social good and computing for good. So we try to help teachers understand how computing has impacted really all aspects of our daily life, from communication to collaboration to problem solving, and also to these ideas of computing for social good. Once we cover content, so every day we have a chunk of time that really focuses primarily on building teachers' content knowledge. We shift into the pedagogical strategies. So we know from the TPAC framework that having knowledge is not enough for effective instruction. You also have to understand how to use good pedagogy, both in terms of general strategies that we know work across fields, but also strategies that are specific to computer science. So every day would model some of these activities, and we focus primarily on 3 types of activities. The first one is kinesthetic type of activities called Computer Science Unplugged, and I have the link down here for those of you who want to kind of check it out. So as the title says, those are computer science activities that are done away from the computer, so no computer involved. Students instead, they kind of act out, the different activities in a kinesthetic way. A couple of activities that we use. So here you can see the Lego blocks here. We do the Harold the Robot, where one participant has to build a structure using the Legos, and then they have to give detailed instructions, and then someone has to replicate the instructions to build the same structure. This covers this idea of algorithms and the idea that a computer would only do exactly what you tell them to do. There are other activities that focus on binary numbers. So students, as you can see, they use different cards to understand the binary system, and they try to represent their age using the binary system of zeros and ones. Another strategy we use is pair programming. So pair programming is a software development technique. I know we have a lot of participants who are coming from computer science background, and where two students work together at one workstation. One is the driver who writes the code, and the other is the navigator who looks at the code, observes, points out issues, and then the two roles switch. So every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, and then eventually it becomes a little more automated. So we have teachers practice that during the workshop. And finally, we engage teachers with open-ended projects that allow for this idea of creativity. So again, those are projects that allow teachers to come up with their own initiatives. They work usually in teams, and they collaborate together, and they're a little bit more what we call open-ended and inquiry-oriented. And the last piece is the sustained reflection. So as we work through with teachers, we have them every day think about their learning. What did they learn that day? What questions do they still have? What challenges do they anticipate when they try to transfer these ideas back into their classrooms? And what is it that they would like to see us do more? So what kind of content and pedagogy they would like to see more? Once teachers complete the Summer Institute, we provide ongoing classroom support for those who are interested. So that's not a mandatory component, and obviously we're also a little bit limited in terms of geographic location. But to accomplish this, we have established a unique initiative, as I have mentioned, called Field Experience in Computing. So the course combines college classroom meetings with classroom experience in K-12 schools. During the course, undergraduates and faculty in computer science and education work together to identify computing lessons and activities relevant to students' age group, interests, and prior experiences, to model pedagogical strategies for teaching computer science, analyze lessons, and reflect on the successes and challenges that they experience in the field. So the university students, they really act as a layer of support for the classroom teachers once they go back into their schools, but they also help a very important role in terms of acting as role models for the students themselves. So here on my screen, you can see just an example of a middle school student working with one of our undergraduate students. So over the years, and I'm going to try to speed up a little bit, we have, as I mentioned, we have implemented the program since 2013. We have provided professional development to over 200 teachers. We had over 100 undergraduates enroll in the course. One thing I did not mention is that the course counts as what we call service learning. So in a lot of United States institutions, the undergraduates, they have to get some service learning credits. This means that they engage in courses where they have an opportunity to work with a community, to work with an authentic organization, to have an impact in an authentic way into a community context. And we estimate that we have reached over 3,000 students based on the professional development that we have provided teachers. So just very briefly, what did we learn in terms of teacher outcomes? So over the years, we collected a number of data. We administer surveys to teachers before and after their participation in the Summer Institute to see their growth, both in terms of their content, but also understanding of different strategies related to computer science. But most importantly, we conduct classroom observations. We're actually right there on the ground observing how teachers are implementing different skills that they've learned over time. And we conduct interviews over time. So both after their participation in the Summer Institute, after one semester and down the road. So over time, we have interviewed more than 100 teachers. We have conducted over 300 types of classroom observations. And we also have all the reflections that our undergraduate students keep when they visit teachers in their classroom, and they do that on a weekly basis. So we actually have over 1,000 reflections from our undergraduate students. So a couple of things we've learned. So the Summer Institute was really important in terms of helping teachers with the content, but also the pedagogical aspects of computer science, and also learning a lot more about what types of computer resources and tools exist out there. For those of us who are in the field, there's just an abundance of tools, some more expensive, some less expensive. There are different curricula, robotics, physical computing, and so on and so forth. While the undergraduate students provided more contextualized type of support that I will talk in a little bit. So I won't read all the slides to you, but you can see some of the examples from the teacher interviews. So as I mentioned, we have found that the Summer Institute was empowering for teachers. It was a great way for them to build their content knowledge, but also meet other teachers who had interest in computing and exchange ideas in terms of actual resources and curricula that they utilize, build teacher confidence. But one of the things that they continue to be challenged with is keeping up with advances in technology. And because for the most part, a lot of them, they did not have a strong background in computing, they did feel that, this was like a real challenge. As you can see this example here, from John, where he says, I don't really have a strong aptitude for it myself. And it's okay, I will let the kids move along, but sometimes they reach a point where I can't help them because I don't have the background, and I get stuck. So this is where our undergraduate students were really helpful. Some teachers focus on implementing all the computer science principles at once, but others, they prefer to move a little more gradually and start with the ones where they felt a little more comfortable, usually their creativity and programming, and then moving on to ones that they found to be more challenging. They did find that the most challenging principle was the abstraction, how to help students understand this idea of abstraction. The last piece that we have found is that teachers did find it necessary to adapt a lot of the materials for their individual classrooms. Because during the workshop, we actually have teachers from multiple grade levels. We try to present somewhere in the middle, so somewhere at the grades 5 to 8, but we do have some teachers who teach lower grade and some high school teachers. So for those teachers, usually we would differentiate and have them work in groups and think about how they can adapt those activities to fit the interest and background of their students. But it does seem like we need to do a little bit of a better job in terms of the differentiation, because the teachers did have a little bit of trouble just adapting what we presented back in their classrooms. So just very briefly, let me talk a little bit about the impact of the undergraduates when they go out and support teachers in the field. So I have found 4 benefits. The first one is this idea of near-peer mentoring. So near-peer mentoring refers to having like a slightly older, student really trying to work with younger students and explain some of those ideas. So the teachers perceive the college students to be highly influential in their classroom. So not just as really near-peer mentors in terms of the content, but really as role models for career choices or college choices or even general decisions. And if we think about this idea of broadening participation in computing and helping the students see what it feels like to be a college student who studies computer science, it really opens up new perspectives, especially for those students who are underrepresented in computing. And here you can see one of our undergraduate students as well. We do a very big effort in terms of sending out teams of diverse undergraduates in the classrooms. And usually we send them in either pairs or small teams, and we try to partner a male with a female. So again, building on this idea of helping us undergraduates serve as role models. The next one is the hands-on support and increased student engagement. So the college students were really instrumental in providing the extra support that was necessary for helping teachers try new things in their classrooms. Because of the challenging circumstances and the not strong background in computing, a lot of teachers needed that layer of support. So having someone there who was a little better in terms of content. So if they get stuck, if the students ask a question that they're not sure how to answer, they have someone there to support them. And as the teachers noted, the college students brought a new level of excitement and engagement. And the last piece that we have found is that while the Summer Institute provided content, pedagogy, and resources, the college students really provided this type of more contextualized and individualized support because they worked directly with the teacher right there into the classroom. And one thing I'd like to say is that although I spoke a lot more about how the college students support the teachers, it's actually quite a win-win situation. So our undergraduates spoke extensively based on data we have collected over time on how this program helped them build their communication skills, soft skills required in their field, because they're forced to explain a lot of technical skills to a non-technical audience, which, as they expect, this is something that they would need to do when they get a job, but also even learning new ways of thinking and new ways of addressing and solving problems from the students themselves. So in summary, we have found that the Summer Institute really impacts content learning, curriculum choices, and implementation of computer science principles. But the classroom-based support really has a more direct impact on teachers by providing this contextualized nature. But the two pieces of the professional development work together to shape the way in which teachers learn new content, learn new strategies in relation to teaching computing, how they adapt and implementing in their classroom. And undergraduate students serve as wonderful role models and really support this idea of broadening participation in computing so that more students could see themselves into this field. Thank you.
Εμείς σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ, κυρία Μουζά, και σας περιμένουμε και ανυπομονησία για να δουλέψουμε μαζί στο Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο. Παρακαλώ, κάποια ερώτηση στην καθηγήτρια.
Να αναφερθώ μόνο σε κάτι, ότι στις ομιλίες που παρακολούθησα έχω μάθει και εγώ πάρα πολλά για τις παρόμοιες προσπάθειες στην Ελλάδα και γενικότερα για την προσπάθεια των Ελλήνων εκπαιδευτικών σε όλες τις βαθμίδες να κάνουν έτσι την τεχνολογία πιο accessible σε πολλά παιδιά. Και χτες σε μία από τις ομιλίες που είχα ακούσει από τον κύριο Βασίλη Γουάλλας, που είχε μιλήσει για το πώς προσπαθούν και με παιδιά Ρωμά, για παράδειγμα, να διευρύνουν για το πώς βλέπει ο καθένας τον εαυτό του. Το βρήκα πολύ ενδιαφέρον, γιατί είχε πει ότι παρόλο που τα μαθήματα ήταν δωρεάν, τα παιδιά δεν κάνανε enough because they couldn't see themselves. They didn't think they belonged there, like it wasn't for them. Και αυτό είναι ένα πολύ σημαντικό κομμάτι που πρέπει να αναπτύξουμε.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Αναμένουμε να είσαστε δίπλα στην ελληνική εκπαιδευτική κοινότητα τα επόμενα χρόνια. Οπότε μπορούμε να προχωρήσουμε στο κλείσιμο του συνεδρίου. Θα ήθελα να μιλήσουν οι διοργανωτές, ξεκινώντας πρώτα-πρώτα από τους όχι αφανείς, αλλά εμφανείς ήρωες του συνεδρίου. Τον κύριο Μπελεσιώτη θα ήθελα πρώτα να μιλήσει, ο οποίος είναι η ψυχή του συνεδρίου μας για πολλά χρόνια. Κύριε Μπελεσιώτη, έχετε το λόγο.
Ναι, ευχαριστώ πολύ. Εγώ θα ήθελα να εκφράσω τις θερμές ευχαριστίες μου σε όλους όσοι εργάστηκαν για την προετοιμασία και την εξαγωγή αυτού του 13ου συνεδρίου πληροφορικής στην εκπαίδευση. Ιδιαίτερα βέβαια στα μέλη μας από το Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο για τον πολύ επιτυχημένο φετινό σχεδιασμό. Θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω τους προσκεκλημένους ομιλητές, συγγραφείς άρθρων, διοργανωτές των εργαστηρίων, πάρα πολύ σημαντικών από ό,τι είδατε, τους κριτές των εργασιών που κρατούν ποιότητα στα άρθρα τα οποία παρουσιάζονται και βέβαια σε όσους το παρακολούθησαν. Τους χορηγούς και εκείνους που μας υποστήριξαν και υποστήριξαν ευρύτερα το συνέδριο. Πιστεύω ότι μετά τη φετινή του, ακόμα και τη φετινή του αναβάθμιση και ποιοτικά, πράγμα που προσπαθούμε κάθε χρόνο, ότι παραμένει χρήσιμο και ενδιαφέρον για την εκπαιδευτική κοινότητα και για όλες τις ειδικότητες πέρα των πληροφορικών. Στους άξονες πληροφορική, ψηφιακή τεχνολογία, ICT του ΠΟΕ, καινοτομία και όχι μόνο. Εγώ εύχομαι καλή επιτυχία σε όλους στο έργο σας και στο έργο μας και φυσικά σας περιμένουμε στο 14ο συνέδριο η πληροφορική στην εκπαίδευση. Ευχαριστώ.
Ωραία. Να διορθώσω κάτι στον κύριο Μπελεσιώτη, ότι πλέον ανήκει και αυτός στην οικογένεια του Ιοντίου Πανεπιστημίου. Αποδέχτηκε την πρότασή μας για να είναι και ερευνητικό συνεργάτης στο Τμήμα Πληροφορικής και πλέον αναμένουμε πολλά από αυτόν που απαλλάχτηκε από τα διοικητικά του καθήκοντα. Η επόμενη πάλι ομιλία είναι στο δεύτερο εμφανή ήρωα, στον κύριο Δουκάκη, τον Σπύρο Δουκάκη, ο οποίος αυτή τη στιγμή τα χαρτιά του είναι στο Υπουργείο για να διοριστεί επίκουρος καθηγητής και αυτό στο Τμήμα Πληροφορικής στο Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο. Παρακαλούμε τον κύριο Δουκάκη.
Ωραία, δεν είχα μικρόφωνο, ήμουνα mute από την κυρία Σεραλίδου και την ευχαριστούμε για όλη τη βοήθεια. Να σε ευχαριστήσω πολύ. 13 χρόνια παρακολουθώ, συμμετέχω στο συνέδριο, από την Κέρκυρα, κύριε Βλάμο, το 2009 και όλα τα υπόλοιπα χρόνια. Έχω ζήσει αυτό το συνέδριο πολύ κοντά. Γνώρισα πολλούς συναδέλφους, αρκετούς πανεπιστημιακούς, έμαθα πράγματα, εξελίχθηκα και εγώ εκπαιδευτικά και επαγγελματικά, δημοσίευσα άρθρα, έχω πραγματοποιήσει και εργαστήρια και φέτος βρέθηκα στο συνέδριο με έναν ακόμα ρόλο, θα έλεγα, το ρόλο του Program Chair μαζί με τον Χρήστο και τον Βασίλη. Να σας ευχαριστήσω θερμά και τον κύριο Αλεξανδρή και εσάς, κύριε Βλάμο, και τον κύριο Δουληγέρη και τον κύριο Βογιατζή που με εντάξατε στην ομάδα. Είναι εξαιρετικό τιμητικό για μένα και σας ευχαριστώ πολύ. Και ταυτόχρονα είμαι πολύ χαρούμενος που το συνέδριο είχε εξαιρετική απήχηση αυτή τη χρονιά. Και είμαι περήφανος και για όλους τους συνεργάτες μας και συνοδοιπόρους σε αυτό το έργο που υποστήριξαν το συνέδριο με πάρα πολύ χαρά όλες τις ανάγκες που υπήρχαν. Τους ευχαριστώ θερμά και σας ευχαριστώ όλους θερμά για την εμπλοκή σας και τη συμμετοχή στο συνέδριο.
Τώρα, πώς μπορείτε να ευχαριστεί θερμά ο Σπύρος που τον βάλαμε και ξενύχτησε και ταλαιπωρήθηκε, αυτό είναι μια άλλη κουβέντα. Εμείς τον ευχαριστούμε. Ας περάσουμε στον εμπνευστή του συνεδρίου, τον καθηγητή μας, τον Νίκο τον Αλεξανδρή. Ήταν αυτός που πρωτοήρθε με την ιδέα της δημιουργίας του συνεδρίου αυτού σαν workshop. Δηλαδή το 2009 με δική του παρένεση το είχαμε κάνει σαν ένα απλό workshop που φάνηκε να έχει μεγάλη απήχηση. Προχώρησα συνέδριο, γιγαντώθηκε και τώρα έχουμε φτάσει πλέον σε συζητήσεις για τη διεθνοποίησή του. Κύριε Αλεξανδρή.
Πολύ. Καλησπέρα σας. Είμαι εξαιρετικά χαρούμενος απόψε, διότι βλέπω ότι το συνέδριό μας ήταν πάρα πολύ επιτυχημένο. Κάθε χρόνο γίνεται και καλύτερο και πιστεύω και την επόμενη χρονιά να είναι ακόμα καλύτερο. Να ευχαριστήσω όλους όσους πήραν μέρος στο συνέδριο, τους ομιλητές, τους εξαιρετικούς προσκεκλημένους ομιλητές, όλους όσους βοήθησαν, όλους όσους συνέβαλαν στην επιτυχία του, όλες τις επιτροπές. Οι επιτροπές όλοι που δουλέψαν φαίνονται στο πρόγραμμα, αλλά υπάρχουν και πολλοί άλλοι που δουλέψαν και ίσως δεν φαίνονται στο πρόγραμμα. Και αυτούς λοιπόν που δεν φαίνονται στο πρόγραμμα πρέπει και αυτούς να τους ευχαριστήσουμε. Είμαι πολύ ικανοποιημένος, σας ευχαριστώ όλους. Ελπίζω το επόμενο συνέδριο να γίνει με φυσική παρουσία και να ειδωθούμε από κοντά όλοι και ιδιαίτερα οι εξαιρετικοί καλεσμένοι μας που είναι τώρα Έλληνες του εξωτερικού και τους βλέπουμε μακριά. Θα ήταν μεγάλη μας χαρά να τους έχουμε του χρόνου στο επόμενο συνέδριο από κοντά, να τους χαιρετήσουμε και να συνομιλήσουμε μαζί τους φυσικά. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Εμείς ευχαριστούμε που ήσασταν ο εμπνευστής και νομίζω ότι το έχουμε ακολουθήσει επάξια για 13 χρόνια την δική σας έμπνευση. Ο επόμενος τηλεβάτης του συνεδρίου, από το Πανεπιστήμιο Πειραιώς, ο καθηγητής ο Χρήστος ο Δουληγέρης.
Να ευχαριστήσω και εγώ. Νομίζω ότι ο κόσμος κουράζεται με τις πολλές ευχαριστίες, αλλά ένα συνέδριο έχει πάρα πολύ δουλειά και πάρα πολύ αγωνία. Πολλοί από εμάς τη ζήσαμε την αγωνία χθες το πρωί με την επίθεση που δεχτήκαμε. Μια πολύ μεγάλη επίθεση. Είχαμε πει να αφήσουμε το συνέδριο ανοιχτό για να έχει πιο πολύ διαδραστικότητα. Τελικά αυτό δεν έγινε τελείως γενικά δυνατόν. Καταφέραμε όμως να λύσουμε το πρόβλημα μέσα σε ένα δεκάλεπτο και να έχουμε λοιπόν καταφέρει να φτάσουμε εδώ πέρα που είμαστε χωρίς προβλήματα πέραν των προβλημάτων της μισής ώρας. Να πω ότι ακόμα και την προηγούμενη μέρα, την Παρασκευή το βράδυ, το πρόγραμμα του συνεδρίου στο Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο δεν ήταν προσβάσιμο. Αρχίζουν όλα αυτά τα προβλήματα της τελευταίας στιγμής για διάφορους λόγους, είτε διοικητικούς, είτε τεχνικούς, ή συντηρήσεις κτλ., τα οποία σε εμάς δημιουργούν μια τεράστια αγωνία για να γίνει το συνέδριο και σε όλους εμάς, εντάξει. Λοιπόν, να ευχαριστήσω ιδιαίτερα την ομάδα στο Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο, τους παλιούς και τους νέους που πάνε εκεί πέρα για να το Σπύρο το Δουκάκη. Συγχαρητήρια, Σπύρο. Είμαστε πάρα πολύ χαρούμενοι για αυτή την εξέλιξη. Πιστεύουμε ότι το συνέδριο κάπως βοήθησε και σε αυτή εδώ πέρα την επαφή με το Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο και τη γενικότερη εξέλιξή σου. Χάρηκα πριν λίγο όταν είδα τη συνάδελφο, την κυρία Μουζά, να κάνει αναφορά στην εργασία και στην εργασία του Γιαννακού. Ήταν πάρα πολύ ωραίο αυτό, να βγαίνουν δουλειές που πραγματικά στέκονται στο διεθνή χώρο από εμάς εδώ στην Ελλάδα. Και επειδή αναφέρθηκε ο κύριος Αλεξανδρής στους αφανείς ήρωες, απλώς να πω την πολλή δουλειά που έχει ρίξει στο Ιόνιο Πανεπιστήμιο, όπως ξέρω ο Σπύρος ο Βούλγαρης, στο στήσιμο του website και συνέχεια να του ζητάμε αλλαγές, να του ζητάμε βάλε και αυτό, άλλαξε κτλ. Και στην πλευρά της τεχνικής υποστήριξης, κάποια ονόματα αναφέρονται στο πρόγραμμα, αλλά απλώς δώστε μου ένα λεπτάκι απλώς να πω τα ονόματα. Η Ελένη Σεραγίδου, που πολλοί από εσάς μιλήσατε μαζί της και μιλάτε μαζί της, ο Πάνος Ογκοτζιόπουλος, ο Βασίλης Βασιλακόπουλος, η Δήμητρα Ετζούμπα, η Έπη Αγγελάκη, η Ρόζα η Μαυροπόδη, που εστάθηκαν πίσω από τη μηχανήματα και παρακολουθούσαν μήπως υπάρχει κάποιο πρόβλημα, ποιος θα βγει, ποιος έχει δικαιώματα και ούτω καθεξής. Έχουν γίνει πια έμπειροι στα συνέδρια. Βέβαια, μετά από πολλά συνέδρια, πρώτη φορά είχαμε επίθεση σε συνέδριο, παρά το ότι έχουμε κάνει πρόσφατα 2-3 με τον ίδιο παρόμοιο τρόπο. Αλλά νομίζω ότι όταν κάνουμε διακυβερνών ασφάλεια, ποτέ δεν σκεφτόμαστε ότι εμείς μπορούμε να πέσουμε θύματα κάποιας συγκεκριμένης επίθεσης. Τώρα προετοιμαζόμαστε ήδη, έχουν αρχίσει τα email μεταξύ μας για την επόμενη χρονιά. Εντάξει, καταλαβαίνετε, ένα συνέδριο έχει ασχοληθεί. Μόλις τελειώσει το ένα, πρέπει να ξεκινήσουμε για την επόμενη χρονιά. Πρέπει να τελειώσουμε εδώ, να βγάλουμε τις βεβαιώσεις, να τελειώσουμε όλα με τα οικονομικά, με την ΕΠΗ κτλ. Και ελπίζουμε για την επόμενη χρονιά να έχουμε ένα συνέδριο αντάξιο, και θα είναι λίγο δύσκολο με όλα αυτά που έγιναν φέτος. Οι προσεκτημένοι ομιλητές, οι επίσημοι που χαιρέτησαν, όλα αυτά τα πράγματα. Είπαμε ότι δεν πήγαμε στην Κέρκυρα, γλιτώσαμε νομίζω κάποιους νεροποντές από τη μια πλευρά, έτσι, να δούμε και τα θετικά. Και από την άλλη πλευρά, άλλο ένα θετικό, ότι νομίζω είχαμε πολύ κόσμο που μπόρεσε να το παρακολουθήσει χωρίς πολλά έξοδα και χωρίς δυσκολίες για άδειες κτλ. Οπότε να δούμε και λίγο τα θετικά όλης αυτής της διαδικασίας που συζητήσαμε τα τελευταία 2 χρόνια. Λοιπόν, σας περιμένουμε του χρόνου. Πιστεύω σε λίγες εβδομάδες θα έχετε ανακοίνωση πού θα γίνει, πώς θα γίνει κτλ. Φαντάζομαι στο ίδιο περίπου χρονικό διάστημα και στους ίδιους τόπους που έχει γίνει τα τελευταία χρόνια. Ευχαριστώ όλους πάρα πολύ θερμά. Παρακολούθησα πολλές ομιλίες και τις κεντρικές και όλες τις και σε άλλες. Η ποιότητα ήταν εξαιρετική. Φτάνουμε σε ένα σημείο που δεν έχουμε να ζητήσουμε τίποτα από οποιοδήποτε άλλο συνέδριο. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ και καλό βράδυ και καλή επιτυχία στα επόμενα.
Ωραιότατα. Τελευταίος χαιρετισμός για να κλείσουμε είναι από την ΕΠΗ, από τον καθηγητή τον κύριο Γιάννη Φογιατζή, που πρέπει να ομολογήσουμε ότι η ΕΠΗ μας έχει αφήσει απεριόριστη ελευθερία για να μπορέσουμε να προσαρμόσουμε προγράμματα, να πειραματιστούμε, να ενσωματώσουμε ομιλίες και εργαστήρια. Κύριε Φογιατζής.
Πρέπει να έχει αποσυνδεθεί μάλλον.
Ωραία. Και εγώ με τη σειρά μου να σας ευχαριστήσω θερμά. Νομίζω ότι με καλύψανε όλοι οι προηγούμενοι, οπότε δεν θα σας κουράσω. Ευχόμαστε πάντα να περνάμε τέτοια μηνύματα, επιστημονικά μηνύματα και εκπαιδευτικά μέσα στην κοινότητα, με την αξία των προσκεκλημένων ομιλητών και των εργαστηρίων που είχαμε, αλλά και την έντονη συνεισφορά και συνεργασία όλων σας που συμμετάσχετε στο συνέδριο, είτε με εργασία, είτε με απλή παρουσία και με το ενδιαφέρον σας για το συνέδριο. Εδώ κλείνουμε για φέτος και αναμένετε τα νέα μας πολύ σύντομα. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
Καλό βράδυ. Συγχαρητήρια σε όλους και στα επόμενα.
Καλή αντάμωση.
Καληνύχτα, ευχαριστώ.
Με το καλό στην Ελλάδα.
Ναι. Να μας δώσετε κάποια ομιλία στον Πειραιά όταν έρθετε, όταν είστε στην Ελλάδα.
Βέβαια, βέβαια. Με την πρώτη ευκαιρία.
Θα χαρώ πάρα πολύ.
Και εγώ.